I gotta say, I've never really been a fan of the PlayStation 3, and I don't know what it is about it, but it never really drew me in, and I honestly was never a fan of the graphics, its presentation, its exclusives, well that is except for Resistance, Uncharted, and of course The Last of Us. But I am glad I did end up owning one, as it gave me a chance to play Resistance 3. Resistance 3 is the third major installment in the Resistance games, but I must say, this one, it sticks out from the other ones. Without a doubt, this is my favorite one in the series. It definitely borrows from other games, but it borrows from really good ones, and honestly, it's a melting pot of some of the best games in one. So I don't really mind that. Yeah, it does have a lot of feels of other games in it, but still, it's really good and pretty creative. The Resistance games are PlayStation exclusives, and there are 3 major installments on the PlayStation 3. Also, the PS Vita and PSP got a game along with each system, but what we're specifically looking at is Resistance 3. Developed by Insomniac Games and published by Sony, it was released September 6 in 2011 in North America on the PlayStation 3 only. So why is Resistance 3 the best in the series to me? Let's check it out. Resistance 3 picks up right after Resistance 1 and 2. If you want to jump right into this one, the game sets you up with the backstory so you get the gist of what's going on, so you don't necessarily have to play the other games, but I would highly suggest it. I will be spilling the middle of the story here from 1 and 2, just FYI, so if you want to avoid that, just skip ahead a minute or so. Moving on. So Resistance 1 and 2, you took control of Nathan Hale, who waged war against the Chimera, who were kind of like aliens who took over human bodies. The Chimera took all over Europe and were headed the way of England and America, so they teamed up to fight the incoming alien race. Losing the fight, a doctor by the name of Floyder Malevich creates a serum that he injects into great soldiers that has Chimera-based things inside of it, and basically turns those soldiers into super soldiers, if you will. Nathan Hill and Joseph Capelli were both enlisted and were formed into Sentinels among other soldiers. Nathan Hill was clearly a better soldier than Joseph, but the two always seem to bump heads. After being ejected, they fight battle after battle. It's clear that Nathan is slowly becoming the enemy, as he does have their blood in his body. Where Resistance 2 ends is right where 3 picks up. Joseph Capelli, the last remaining member of the Sentinels, he is dishonorably discharged for killing Nathan Hill as he was turning into the enemy. Turns out, after death, Nathan Hill's blood had an antidote to what was injected into him and Joseph to keep him alive, and the same thing is starting to happen to Joseph as well, and it would eventually turn him into the enemy too. Saved and out of the military, Joseph hunkers down and is now living in Haven, Oklahoma with his now wife Susan and son Jack. Their location is soon discovered by the Chimera, as they want every single last human killed or turned into them. Fighting off the enemy, it turns out Dr. Floyd Malevich, the creator of the serum of the Sentinels, has come looking for Joseph, as he has discovered the Chimera have opened a wormhole in New York, and it is slowly terraforming the planet to leave it uninhabitable for humans. He wants Joseph to come with him to New York, as he has a plan to stop it, but he is clearly not a fighter and needs Joseph's help. Angry at Malevich for everything he's put him through, he basically tells him to get lost, but with Joseph's son Jack sick, Susan, his wife, wants him to go, as the doctor has informed her of basically what's going to happen to the world if someone doesn't go and fix it. It would clearly be the end of the human race and the end of their son Jack. He agrees to do his best and sets off to New York with Malevich to close the wormhole and save humanity, and most importantly his wife and his son Jack. They gear off and set off running into battles where they end up running into a survivalist group known as the Remnants. They both need something from each other, so they end up helping each other out. In the midst of it, I would say they kind of develop somewhat of a bond. From here on, you get sidetracked on your way to New York and battles the Chimera, zombie-like Chimera, and even crazier prisoners who now call themselves the Wardens, who have taken over a prisoner after the Chimera have pretty much destroyed everything, and holding it up and making it like basically a society where the prisoners are the rulers of this small prison and use outsiders to fight for their amusement. In the midst of all that, Dr. Malevich is killed, and leaving it up to Joe to continue the journey to New York to find a way to close the wormhole himself. Anything else I say from here on out pretty much would spoil it, but just so you know, the story is gripping, is compelling, and most definitely fantastic. As the world Resistance has set up for itself, this game in particular is a tale of a man who is on a mission to save his family from certain death, along with the whole human race, and I think that's what gives the story a more meaningful feel, other than the prior 2 games. In Resistance 1 and 2, it felt so, well, like Call of Duty to me. You know, kill, 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 and well, why? Because they're trying to kill us. And yet, some may like that, but personally, I like more of a personal story and a meaning behind my actions, not just kill because, well, that's what you're supposed to do. It gives Joe a reason to fight, a reason to survive, a reason to do what he does because he really needs to, and I really like that. I think the story here is the best in the franchise in my opinion. Resistance 1 and 2 to me felt like military shooters, where here in Resistance 3 it gives off some of that, but it's more of a post-apocalyptic feel, with kind of a feeling of survival horror, but it's most definitely action-oriented. The feeling of dread is a theme as the Chimera are demolishing the human race, and the feeling of overwhelming forces is present around every corner with just small pockets of humanity clutching to life in hope that they are not found by the Chimera. Set in the 1950s as a demolished world, it gives it a very unique look along with the decay and destruction of everything around it, and it gives this world a sense of fear and horror. The visuals they were trying to portray, everything bleak and miserable, still look great, as I don't think they hold up so great in 2016, but 2011, it was pretty amazing. I do feel it sometimes is a little too dark and colorless, but at the same time, I know that's what they were going for. It doesn't look horrible, it does look a bit dated, but hey, there's nothing wrong with that. There were a few bugs with enemies being trapped in the wall after dying, and enemies just running around and moving nowhere. And these were very few and far between, but when it did happen, it kind of pulled me out of the experience of the game, as the immersion of the story and the realism I think is what drives this game. But to see the Chimera who you should be terrified of looking like a complete idiot, I don't know, it just kind of threw me out of the game. But other than these mishaps, which are very few by the way, the game runs very smooth. The level design can be very creative, going in a destroyed building and back out, and then going back into another destroyed building. It's very linear, but it does give you somewhat of a choice on how to get from point A to point B, with some open epic space battles, and mostly some corridor shooting. The tone of the game feels like Halo, Gears of War, Call of Duty, and somewhat of some kind of zombie game at times. All this mixed together gives Resistance a feel of, well, you've kind of seen everything what you're doing already, but still it kind of feels original at the same time. I say the game's kind of like Halo because of the main Chimera, their space age weaponry, different types of Chimera, along with these kind of like open areas where you can kind of pick and choose how you want to attack the situation. I say Gears of War 2 because of that feeling of dread and fighting to stay alive where the world's already being destroyed, and also fighting these huge monster-like Chimera. At the same time, I still say Call of Duty 2 because there are sections of the game where you're feeling like you're kind of surrounded by these epic battles, and you have really no control of what's going on around you. You just fight endless waves of enemies, and it feels more of a military aspect. And finally, I say it's Zombie King because there are sections where it's just straight up mutated humans running after you to try to eat your face, and they feel like kind of a zombie game and a zombie vibe. These tones and feels switch up throughout the game, giving it different distinct ways to play, but never really feeling too fresh. But I have to say, all this wrapped up in one package is great. The atmosphere and the tone is definitely why I think this game is the best in the series, and also the gameplay. Well, which brings us to Resistance is the FPS that brings back that old school feel with a weapon wheel where you can hold on to all weapons you come across and health packs. And honestly, if I don't think it did the health pack thing, I think this game wouldn't have been as challenging as it was. If it would have stuck to like that healing type factor that like most FPSs do today, I think the game would have been way too easy. And with the weapons in this game all being awesome, it's hard to pick which one you want to use sometimes, as you do have to use different weapons to address certain situations, and they're all useful and fun, and all weapons having a secondary fire option. One thing Resistance 3 most definitely got right is the weapons, from the standard carbine to the bullseye that's a little bit more futuristic, sniper, rocket launcher, and that's just to name a few. They're all upgradable, and the way that you level them up is actually from using them. The more you use a weapon, the more powerful it will become, and also with different attributes it can bring to the table. For example, the bullseye, its secondary fire is to lock onto a target, so no matter where they go for a brief period of time, you can lock onto that target and you can blast them no matter where they go. After you level it up, it can lock onto 3 different targets at the same time, and you can hit 3 targets no matter where they go. Or the sniper rifle, in which after leveled up, looking down the sights, it puts a cursor over the enemy's head, giving you an easier time to perform headshots. And there's the auger, and I kind of feel this gun is a cheat gun. When you aim down the sights, you can shoot through walls, and you can take down hordes of enemy without even having to come in contact with them. But don't worry, your enemies can use it as well, and so it makes you not be able to sit still for too long. But I won't lie, I did kind of use this gun to get out of sticky situations. But at the end of the day, it's very, very cool and very creative. At the same time, it is kind of cheap. Anyway, leveling up your guns really makes you switch up your gameplay and makes you use different weapons, of course, because of situations that arise in enemy types in the game, but it also rewards you with more powerful weapons and add-ons, which I thought was a really great idea. Kinda made me love switching up my weapon usage a lot to see what the next gun could use after being upgraded and how much more it could perform. There's grenades, of course, and you get 4 this time around, and they're all kind of essential to gameplay. Some you need to drop on enemy shields to lower their shield to be able to actually damage them, and some you will just need to because you'll be flat out overwhelmed. So every weapon here is useful, like I mentioned, but even more so because of all the different enemy types that you will face. From the standard Chimera soldier to the huge bulking Chimera, to huge robotic walking death things, zombie-like mutated abominations to these little bug Chimera things, to jumping snipers. And if I may, these fuckers got on my nerves. Just when you're about to pop these fuckers in the face, they jump out of the way. And there's these things that kept reminding me of those robots from that movie Batteries Not Included.
Welcome to America.
Oh, and humans too. Anyway, with a great mixture of enemies, and each type keeps you on your toes, and with health packs being pretty scarce, and enemies having a damn good deadeye, they can all present a challenge if you're not paying close attention to your surroundings and what you're doing. The challenge here by no means is easy. But it's not too hard either. I would say it's the right amount of challenge without you laughing and giggling or throwing your controller through the TV. But there are certain areas that feel super cheap, especially with the snipers towards the end. The level design here gives great strength to the gameplay, from the corridor shootings to the inside of the bases to more open-ended areas that give you a small amount of freedom to get from your destination, with some areas using more of a verticality aspect than more of an open area. But in the end, it's all very linear. Boss fights here are not really a thing. They do put you in areas that you go up against a really big threat like a huge chimera or so, but I wouldn't say they're necessarily boss fights. I mean, they can be challenging to a degree, but I do think some of the challenging areas are fighting against normal enemies towards the end of the game. They can be pretty tough, and they feel more threatening than the bigger enemies they pit you up against. I really like the areas where they put you up against the mutated chimera, as it gives you a tone of a zombie game. To these are my favorite sections. I think Resistance, if they would or could, should make an entire game of these kind of sections. That would be amazing. Well, they did kind of do that with the DLC, which gives you all the weapons, but you're basically in horde mode against these things, and you basically just live as long as you can. It's cool, but it gets old very quick. But I would love to see a story introduced with these levels. Probably would never happen, but just to express how much these areas were so much fun and so intriguing. I really like these areas. They were set out to be creepy and give you a kind of a feeling of survival against brainless monsters, and I loved it. There were a few sections of the game where I felt I was almost on a rail shooter, to a degree, and even though they work in the context of the story, they're kinda cool, but I would much rather be out walking around than confined to a small area shooting. Nonetheless, the gameplay here is some of the PlayStation 3's best in FPS. I am really a fan of FPSs, and I must say the gameplay here is top notch. The controls and weapons feeling tight and fun, and shoot along with a variety of different enemy types with different areas, and the tones of this game made it a fun ass time. So unfortunately, the multiplayer aspect of the game is no longer up and running. The servers were shut down on April 8th of 2014. But honestly, if I remember the multiplayer, it was kind of average. So if you do pick this up now, just know you're only getting a campaign. But honestly, I think that's all you really need with this one. Resistance 3 is a damn fun time. It's on the shorter side, around 8 hours. Rather than some games being like 16 hours, but only a few of those hours are fun, the entire 8 hours is a blast. As I get older, I come to enjoy shorter games, as having responsibilities, it's nice to play and finish something in a time frame that I can actually play it in, as I don't always have all the time in the world. But that's just my personal opinion. So if you think 8 hours is too short for a campaign, to each their own, but I will say what this game does and goes for, I think it's great. It doesn't take any time off from the action for the most part, with having a great mix of different tones across the game, making it feel varied with each part being exciting and distinct. The atmosphere here, along with the story, acting, and gameplay, equals a PlayStation 3 masterpiece in my opinion. I will admit I have probably played this game 4 times at this point, and that's more than I can say for a lot of other games that I own. The gameplay here is what always brings me back, and if you have never experienced this game and you have a PlayStation 3, I would highly recommend this is something you need to play and own. If you have never played any of the Resistance games, or you did and you stopped before this one, Resistance 3 is the best in the series, and if you enjoyed the first or the second one, this one is different and much better in my opinion. I would suggest you give it a chance, as you might be really surprised at just how fun and good this game is. You can't skip over this title. It doesn't do anything here that you haven't seen before, but I would say you would be missing out on one of the best FPSs on the PS3, period. So, yo, this is Kamikaze Soundwaves. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you liked the review, and we'll see you next time. Later.